All right, let's jump right in. Today we're doing a deep dive into the visual effects of The Lord of the Rings. You guys sent us this awesome YouTube video all about the making of the films.
Yeah, I think it's really great.
And we're going to break it down. We're going to talk about the studio Weta Digital.
Yes.
See how they brought Middle-earth to life. I mean, just thinking about their creative solutions and their DIY spirit, it's really inspiring. It's amazing how their techniques evolved across the films.
Well, and you know what's really cool about Weta Digital is they weren't just like hired for the job.
Right.
You know, they didn't just come in, just do their thing and then leave. They really kind of evolved organically alongside those Lord of the Rings films.
Yeah.
They became a vital creative partner.
I love that. And the video talks about Weta's, origin story, how it all started with heavenly creatures back in 1994. It's wild. They essentially said, instead of outsourcing the visual effects, they basically said, hold my beer, we got this.
Right. And they bought one SGI workstation, some software, a film scanner, and a recorder.
Right.
That was it. That was Weta Digital at the very beginning.
That's amazing. So how on earth did they go from that single workstation to creating over 580 complex shots for Fellowship of the Ring just a few years later?
Well, timing played a huge role. In the late 1990s, CGI really took a massive leap forward, computer-generated imagery. And this allowed filmmakers to do things that were just impossible before. And this was really important for something as visually ambitious as, like Tolkien's vision.
Right. So you're saying that without CGI, Middle-earth on screen would have looked drastically different.
Exactly. Yeah, totally different.
Oh, man. I guess we wouldn't have gotten those sweeping shots of Rivendell or the Mines of Moria.
Nope. CGI was really key for creating these incredible environments that would have just been impossible to actually build. Like the video specifically mentions Dwarrowdelf. Imagine trying to build a set for those massive corridors.
Oh my gosh, yeah. No, it would have been impossible.
Filled with pillars and everything.
Okay, so CGI solved some problems, but I bet it also presented some new challenges, right?
Definitely. It did. The video mentions this really funny story about the Elven ruin scene. So they're shooting the footage. The helicopter drifts a little too far away, creates a huge problem for the VFX team when they're trying to add in the CGI ruins.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The camera movement just got all wonky, so how did they fix it?
They ended up digitally recreating the entire hillside.
Whoa.
It's a great example of how even what seems like a simple shot can become super complex and lead to these really creative solutions in filmmaking.
Wow. That's a perfect transition into another area where Weta really excelled, creature design. You know I'm a huge fan of movie monsters.
Yes, you are.
The video talks about Peter Jackson's passion for these creatures in the style of Ray Harryhausen, but brought to life with the power of CGI.
It's a great combination. And you can really see that blend of classic inspiration and cutting-edge technology in creatures like the Watcher in the water.
Oh, yeah.
Like the goal was to make it look like a real creature moving underwater.
Right.
And they really focused on realistic movement, and they added those dynamic water splashes to really amp up the action.
Yeah, it's funny because the video mentions that this terrifying scene actually started as basically a nothing shot in the raw footage.
Right, there wasn't much there to begin with.
Yeah.
But Weta, they really transformed it into this incredibly memorable moment through their artistry and technical, prowess.
Speaking of memorable creatures, what about the cave troll?
Oh, yes.
That scene is both epic and surprisingly emotional.
It is. And in the video, Peter Jackson even jokes about the cave troll's mother, waiting for him back in Moria.
It's that touch of, unexpected pathos.
Yeah.
That's what makes it so compelling.
It is.
But on a technical level, that cave troll was a major milestone for Weta. It was the first creature that they fully realized using this new digital pipeline.
It's impressive. They created a digital cave troll with a skeleton, muscles, skin, and it all just moved so realistically. You can really see it in those close-ups, the way the troll's skin stretches and flexes.
I remember seeing that scene for the first time and just being completely blown away. How did they get that level of detail?
A combination of really meticulous digital modeling and motion capture technology.
Okay, that makes sense. But motion capture, I gotta admit, that still sounds like magic to me.
Basically, they record an actor's movements.
Oh, okay.
And then they translate those movements onto this digital character. So that's how they made the cave troll.
Okay.
And other digital characters move so naturally.
Wait, I read somewhere that Peter Jackson actually did some of the motion capture for the cave troll fight scene himself.
Yes, he did.
Really?
They built this whole virtual reality environment of the set, and they had Peter Jackson act out the troll's movements
Oh my God.
while wearing a motion capture suit.
That's
And it allowed them to plan the shots more effectively and make a much more dynamic action sequence.
It's like he was playing a video game while directing a movie.
Yes, exactly.
That's next level.
Yeah,
Did they use motion capture for any other creatures?
they did. But let's save that for after we talk about another iconic and fiery creation.
I'm talking about the Balrog.
The Balrog, a creature of fire and shadow. That must have been a visual effects nightmare to create.
Definitely a challenge. Initially, they thought about just using like purely digital fire,
Right.
but they quickly realized it just did not look real enough.
Yeah. So they opted for practical effects.
Well, it was kind of a combination. They filmed real fire elements like explosions and gas jets,
Okay.
and then they manipulated those digitally using what's called a particle system.
Okay, you're going to have to explain particle systems to me because that sounds very technical. So essentially, it's a way to control the movement of tons of tiny little elements like sparks or smoke to create this really realistic effect. Think of it like choreographing a swarm of fireflies.
Okay.
They use this to drive those fire elements around the Balrog's body, creating that illusion of flowing flames.
That's incredible. It's like this delicate dance between practical and digital.
Exactly.
They weren't afraid to use whichever approach worked best for the story.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And that commitment to finding the best solution, no matter what method, is also evident in how they created, that really unsettling world that Frodo enters when he wears the One Ring.
You're talking about the Wraith world?
Yes, the Wraith world.
Oh, yes, the Wraith world. That sequence always gives me chills. What did they use to create that, distorted reality?
They used a technique called optical flow, which basically means distorting imagery, like using other moving footage as a trigger, almost like looking at the world through, like a rippling puddle.
Okay, that's a great analogy. So what kind of footage did they use to create those distortions?
Well, they used footage of fire and water ripples to create those warping effects.
Whoa!
In the Wraith world, almost like they're using real-world elements to warp reality itself.
It's so clever, and the result is, truly unsettling. It makes you really feel Frodo's disorientation and, the power of the ring's influence.
It's a great visual metaphor for the corrupting power of the ring and those dangers that Frodo faces.
Okay, so we've talked about individual creatures, but what about those epic battle scenes with thousands of characters?
What?
How did they create armies of that scale?
Well, that's where this really revolutionary software called Massive comes in.
Massive? Okay.
It uses artificial intelligence and artificial life principles to simulate crowd behavior. Realistic crowd behavior.
Wait, so they didn't have to, animate each individual soldier?
No. With Massive, each character acts autonomously, based on a set of rules and reactions to its environment. So this created emergent behavior that felt supernatural and believable.
So it's kind of like they created a digital ant colony where each ant is following a set of rules, and then the collective behavior creates this complex and organic whole.
Exactly. And the results are amazing. The battle scenes feel massive and chaotic, but there's a sense of order within that chaos. You can see individuals fighting, falling, reacting to the events around them.
It's incredible to think each of those digital soldiers had its own brain, reacting to the battle in real time. Did they use Massive for anything else besides the battle scenes?
They did, but let's unpack that after a quick break.
Yeah.
So we were just discussing how Weta revolutionized those battle scenes with that software Massive.
Right. Those epic clashes in Helm's Deep and Minas Tirith wouldn't have been the same without it. But you mentioned they used Massive for more than just battles. What else did they use it for?
Well, remember those scenes where the Fellowship is scrambling down those crazy steep stairs in Moria?
Oh, yeah. Those stairs were practically vertical. I would not want to film on those, even with a stunt double.
Exactly. And they use Massive to create digital doubles of the actors for those scenes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it allowed them to film the actors safely on a much less treacherous set, and then use Massive to realistically place them into that digital environment of the Moria stairs.
That's so smart. It's like a digital safety net for those risky shots. And I bet it also saved them a bunch of time and money compared to building those elaborate sets.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because they didn't just use digital doubles for dangerous scenes.
Right.
They also used them for shots involving vast landscapes and even for scenes using miniature sets.
So even in a film known for its practical effects, they were strategically integrating digital elements to enhance the storytelling and the whole filmmaking process.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a testament to their skill and artistry that these digital doubles were basically indistinguishable from the real actors.
It's all about creating that seamless and believable experience for the audience. Speaking of seamless transitions, I was always really struck by the scene at the ford of Bruinen where the ring wraiths are swept away by those spectral water horses. That scene always gives me chills.
Oh, the Flood of Bruin is a spectacular sequence. And it's actually a great example of Weta collaborating with another visual effects studio to achieve those grand-scale visuals.
Really, I thought Weta handled all the effects for Lord of the Rings. What studio do they collaborate with?
They brought in Digital Domain, another top VFX house, to handle that flood sequence. It seems it was partly a matter of logistics and workload. Digital Domain had the bandwidth and expertise to tackle such a complex and demanding scene.
Makes sense.
And that freed up Weta to focus on other aspects of the film.
So even in a project of this magnitude, collaboration and shared expertise were key to its success.
Absolutely. And it wasn't just a handoff either. Digital Domain received early cuts, concept art, and even some pre-existing plates from Weta, who had initially planned to handle the scene themselves.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That speaks to a strong spirit of cooperation within the visual effects industry. It wasn't about competition. It was about working together to achieve the best possible results for the film.
Exactly. And those water horses are a prime example of that collaborative spirit, resulting in breathtaking visuals.
Yeah, how did they create those?
They used a combination of real water elements and CGI to create those ethereal and powerful creatures.
I read that they used a technique called sewing to achieve this effect. Can you explain what that entails?
Yeah, so sewing basically involves taking footage of real water and seamlessly integrating it into the computer-generated scenes. It's like weaving together different pieces of fabric to create a cohesive tapestry.
That's a great analogy. So they weren't just creating digital water from scratch. They were using real-world elements as the foundation for their effects.
Exactly. It's another example of their commitment to blending practical and digital techniques to achieve the most believable and immersive results.
And it's fascinating that they repurposed the digital models of the horses used for the ring wraiths to create the water horses. It's like they had this digital toolbox full of incredible assets and knew exactly how to adapt and reuse them in creative ways.
Resourcefulness was key in a production of this scale. And it also demonstrates their understanding that sometimes the most effective solutions are found by adapting existing assets in new and innovative ways.
Speaking of innovative solutions, I want to circle back to Massive and delve a little deeper into its inner workings. It's mind-boggling to think that those massive armies weren't individually animated.
It really is a groundbreaking approach to crowd simulation. Remember, they focused on creating individual agents that responded to their surroundings, which led to that emergent behavior that felt so natural.
Right. Each digital soldier had a kind of brain making decisions based on the situation. But I'm still a bit fuzzy on how they controlled the overall flow of the battle. It's not like you can just tell 1,000 digital soldiers to go fight over there and expect a coherent scene.
Right. It's more nuanced than that. They used a combination of pre-programmed behaviors, environmental cues, and even a bit of digital puppetry to guide the action. Think of it as a mix of choreography and improvisation.
Okay, so it wasn't just a random free-for-all. They had ways to influence the overall direction of the battle while still allowing for those moments of individual character and emergent behavior.
Exactly. It's a delicate balance between control and chaos. And it's a testament to their mastery of this software that they were able to pull it off so effectively.
It's incredible to think about the level of detail and planning that went into every aspect of these effects. It's no wonder that Weta Digital became such a powerhouse in the visual effects industry.
And their impact extends far beyond the Lord of the Rings.
Plus,
Massive has become an industry standard for creating realistic crowd simulations in films, television shows, and even video games.
wow, that's amazing. It's a testament to their innovation and the lasting legacy of their work. But amidst all this talk of technology, I think it's important to remember the human element behind these groundbreaking effects.
Absolutely. The video makes it clear that Weta Digital wasn't just a collection of talented individuals, but a true community of artists, technicians, and storytellers.
Right. It wasn't just about the tools and techniques. It was about the people who wielded them and the passion they poured into their craft.
Exactly. And that collaborative spirit, that shared drive to push the boundaries of what was possible, is evident in every frame of The Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, it's inspiring to see how they tackled these challenges not as individuals, but as a collective force united by a common goal. Speaking of challenges, I'm reminded of a particular effect in the video that really captured my imagination. It involves Frodo's transition into the Wraith world when he wears the One Ring. That disorienting and unsettling reality felt so different from the rest of the film.
Ah, yes, the Wraith world. It's a fascinating example of how they use visual effects to create not just a visual spectacle, but also a psychological experience for the viewer.
Right. It wasn't just about making things look cool. It was about conveying the emotional and psychological impact of the ring on Frodo.
Exactly. Remember how they achieved that distinctive, distorted visual style? They used that clever technique called optical flow.
Oh, yeah, where they used footage of real-world elements like fire and water ripples to warp the imagery. It's like looking at the world through a cracked lens.
That's a great way to put it. And it's fascinating how they use those real-world patterns to create a visual language that conveyed the disorienting and unsettling nature of the Wraith world.
It's as if they were warping reality itself to reflect Frodo's altered perception under the influence of the ring. And it wasn't just subtle distortion, it was almost violent at times.
You're right. Remember how Frodo's body seemed to stretch and contort as he moved through that world? It was both fascinating and disturbing to watch.
It really emphasized the immense power of the ring and the danger it posed to Frodo's mind and body. It was a powerful visual metaphor for the corrupting influence he was struggling against.
It's amazing how they could use visual effects to not only create stunning visuals, but also to convey deeper meanings and emotions. It speaks to the artistry and thoughtfulness behind every decision they made.
Well, it seems like we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, from Weta Digital's humble beginnings to their mastery of cutting-edge technology and their collaborative spirit. But I bet there are still a few more hidden gems in the video just waiting to be unearthed.
You're absolutely right. Let's take a moment to gather our thoughts and then dive back in to uncover those final fascinating details about the making of the Lord of the Rings visual effects. We'll be right back.
Okay, I'm ready to unearth those last few hidden gems.
All right, get this. One of the tools Weta Digital used was actually a handheld scanner, originally designed to scan meat carcasses.
A meat scanner. Wait, what? How did that end up in a visual effects studio?
So the New Zealand Meat Board used these scanners to assess, meat quality.
Okay.
Would have adapted this technology to scan their maquettes.
Right, those physical models.
Those physical models they created of all the creatures and characters.
So they took a tool from the meat industry and turned it into a cutting-edge visual effects instrument.
It did.
That's incredible.
It really shows their resourcefulness and their willingness to think outside the box. And this meat scanner, it was actually a huge upgrade for them, allowed them to capture so much more detail from the physical models, which led to much more accurate and realistic digital representations.
Wow, it's a great reminder that innovation can come from the most unexpected places. And it also kind of reinforces this DIY spirit that we've seen throughout this whole deep dive.
Absolutely. They weren't afraid to experiment and adapt existing technologies to meet their needs.
Yeah.
And that spirit of ingenuity, it went beyond just the tools and tech. It really infused their entire approach to filmmaking.
Right, you're talking about their collaborative spirit.
Yes.
The video really emphasizes how Weta Digital wasn't just a group of talented people, but a real tight-knit community.
Exactly.
Artists working together.
Communication, cooperation, and this shared passion for pushing boundaries were so essential to their success. From those early days with one workstation to the massive undertaking of those epic battle scenes, it was their combined efforts that really brought Middle-earth to life.
And it wasn't just the team at Weta Digital, right?
No.
They collaborated with other visual effects studios, relied on the expertise of programmers and engineers, and of course worked directly with Peter Jackson and the entire filmmaking team.
Absolutely. It really highlights how interconnected filmmaking is.
Yeah.
And to achieve something as grand as Lord of the Rings required a symphony of talent and dedication.
It's so inspiring to see how they brought together so many diverse skills and perspectives to create one shared vision. And the impact of their work goes way beyond just these films.
It does. They've inspired countless other filmmakers and visual effects artists. They pushed the boundaries of technology, and they set a new standard for what's possible in cinema.
It's a legacy of innovation, artistry, and this deep respect for filmmaking. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the making of the Lord of the Rings visual effects, what's the one key takeaway you hope our listeners will leave with?
Well, I think the magic of cinema doesn't just lie in the technology or the techniques. It's in those passionate individuals who use those tools, the stories they tell, and the emotions they evoke. It's about the power of collaboration, that drive to innovate, and the belief that anything is possible if you just dare to dream big.
Well said. I think that's the perfect note to end on. To our listener, we hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity and given you a new appreciation for the incredible artistry that brings our favorite films to life. Remember, there's always more to discover and more to be inspired by in the world of cinema, so keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.